Finding meaning without a pitchfork. So the universe has no inherent meaning, and that's kind of a big saying, and there's a lot of people waking up to this. And that might be scary for people that have been latched on to meaning, trying to find meaning. But the great news is that the universe has value, and it has a lot of value. And we're going to explore the idea of finding value without needing a pitchfork. And so what do I mean by that? A pitchfork. That means take a look at our world. And I'm going to use the idea of the mainstream mind. In the United States right now, the mainstream mind are those people that are plugged into the constant news, opinions, and they put together meaning. And what they're really doing is creating value by having opinions and then arguing and deciding where and who needs a pitchfork put into them. And think of cancel culture, those kind of things. So how do we find meaning within this idea that there is no inherent meaning to the universe? Well, first of all, the value of the universe is inherent and innate within us. And then we're taught to create meaning or to follow along with other people's idea of what meaning should be. So that's you're a good if you do this, and you're bad if you do this. And if you think about the mainstream mind and how that's what that is. And then it's pitchforks being pointed at pitchforks, memes, jokes, and, little quips to blast other people's ideas of what is meaningful and what is not meaningful. So how do we look for value? How do we look for what's meaningful? Well, it's inside of us. We innately are connected to it. It's not that the things that the mainstream mind are thinking are right or wrong. And that's the problem with the mainstream mind, is that it is in a constant state of believing that these high emotions, where is my outrage best served? And that is like the wall or the veil, that if you're still plugged into that, like that's just reality, and it's pitchforks, and that's the only way to do it. And once you get unplugged from that mainstream mind, you start to see and start to find your own value in the world. And so what do you hold on to and what do you let go of? And that comes from, in the Lenzafarian terms, that comes from the good feelings, and follow the good feelings. And that sounds the sunny side and whatever else. It's because look what the stories are telling in the mainstream mind. If you follow this, you're a good person and there's rewards on the other side. That isn't true. The reward is here and now. The reward is heaven on earth. And it is about finding that truth. And finding that truth is you can follow the good feelings. Well, a lot of people don't even have access to the good feelings because they have been taught to be nice. And being nice is, if we take it apart and bring it up into the head. So we have this idea of a mind heart. And that's where the mainstream mind lives by. It lives from inside the mind. And so the mind creates where to put empathy. This is where we should call these people. If you see that the mainstream mind is connected very deeply to politics, because it's an easy scapegoat. You can just say, well, I'm really political, and if I join this party, this is where the meaning is. I'm fighting for this. These people are fighting for that. And once you are able to pull out of that, you can recognize that it's people playing at a very superficial level. And that's because it's meaning that's been created from the mind. So think of it as like empathy. True empathy comes deep and embodied. That means that you have to take this little short journey, which is from here into your heart. And it's a whole different version. It's a whole different version of reality when all you have to do is go, the 12 to 18 inches from your mind into your heart. But we can stay in our mind if we're fighting over meaning, and we're fighting over value. And then we get real ruptured into using anger. Think of it as like the mind heart wants a pitchfork, because it's putting together value. And then if somebody doesn't agree with that value, well, they need to know what's true. And then you got to poke. Then you got to get poked, or there needs to be poked. So I just imagine, like, that's how I kind of see it, as everybody's just got, in the mainstream mind, they have pitchforks pointed at each other, and both believing that their anger is justified, which it is. From their perspective, it's all justified, and it is the meaning that they're creating, and so they feel as if they need to fight, and so they do fight, and then they justify their fighting and say, well, pitchforks are needed. So, but there's a lot of people that are waking up and saying, hey, that's not the way. And they're getting to the point where they're like, where is meaning? Where there's a lot of young people waking up today and saying, I don't know what to believe. And the simple truth is, you got to get out of your head and go into your heart. Start embodying principles. And once you figure out that these principles, like kindness, is a giant step into a good feeling, because kindness feels good, because kindness is clear. If we're looking from a personal boundaries idea, kindness is about letting people know how you feel. And sometimes they're not going to like it. But it's clear and it's truthful. And you're speaking the truth when you're speaking from that point of view. And so when a person learns kindness, it's a good feeling. Kindness is really good to both people. It's both, and it's a balancing agent of the psychological phenomenon of codependency and narcissism. So that's just another overlay, is the psychology look at that. So how do you find value? Look for the good feelings. That's why they say look to be grateful for what you have, because what you're doing is you're literally looking out into the world and going, I see value, I see value, I see value, and instilling that within yourself. And so it's a good feeling to feel grateful, and it's an upticking experience, rather than I have to be a warrior to poke at everybody's ideas all day long. So finding value then is really appreciating this universe. And if you wanted to look at it from the lens of the God perspective of finding God, well, you could go to this: God created this world, and so it's for me to figure out how to enjoy this world. And it isn't going to be a mind created reality. It's going to be an embodied experience, because that's the thing that the mind heart doesn't understand. That's what the argument is in the mainstream mind, is over the mind heart. It's like, no, I'm finding this value. No, you need to find this value, this value, this value. And once you read it, once you figure out that it's ridiculous, that whole thing is just a ridiculous story that people are trying to play with, you can say, okay, I was part of it. I was part of that mind. I thought I was being a good person by following the political movement, setting up the pitchfork towards the people that I thought deserved the pitchfork. And then I recognized that it is in my judgments, and that was the mind-centered idea of reality. So what is valuable? Well, first of all, you have to have a clear mind, to be able to understand that. And in the mainstream mind, they will insist that you create value by having anxiety. Like that's your burden to bear, is anxiety. To help the suffering of every person is to do suffering for yourself. And that suffering is literally just mind created suffering. You just keep changing it and relensing it so that you're the hero of the suffering story. I'm the martyr of the story. I can't go to bed at night because I have a busy mind, but I wake up and I get all these compliments because I've got my pitchfork pointed at the right person or the right group or whatever else. And after a while, there's people that are waking up to this and they're going, well, I don't know what's meaningful. Well, the good feelings are meaningful. The world is meaningful. It doesn't matter what overlay you put it. If you put God and make it a religious one, then that overlay is that is what we're given, is we can have our own emotional guidance system and look at the embodiment of that belief would be to have a calm mind, to be able to pick up whatever messages, if you're going through that, messages that God's giving to you. But if you're just creating a story inside your head and you're constantly figuring out who the enemy is outside of you, and doing that by an identity-based thing, you'll never get out of that story. You'll only be the winner of the mind-heart reality. So the good news is that you have everything. We all have it. And it's about finding the idea and finding it within yourself. And we get to practice bravery. It takes bravery to rip ourselves away from the mainstream mind, and it's going to feel lonely for a while, because there are people like me who are going to be giving you celebration for being away from the mainstream mind, because you're starting to wake up and you're starting to recognize there's a different way to look at the world. So in Lensafarianism, we just say, well, we just change the perspective until we create value. And it goes both ways. I wake up every day saying, what's my offering to create value in this world? And then what value can I appreciate? What value can I have gratitude for at the same time? So it's a giving and receiving, not taking. And that's the mind heart, is takers live in the mind heart. And people who don't give a place from their actual heart, from the mind heart, are takers as well, because they have an expectation that I'm going to give value, so I need to get value returned to me. So finding value, there's lots of value in this world. And there's value within all the overlays. If you look at spiritual paths, if you look at religious paths, if you look at philosophical paths, all of those things, it isn't a matter of believing one to be true. It's about finding the big T, the big truth within it. The one that where you can hold value without having expectations from the outside world. So any overlay, Lensifarianism is just an overlay. It's just a fun way to do it. It's an amazing way to do it. So finding value. There's so much value in this world. It's so beautiful. Things to chase is beauty, enjoyment, appreciation. But it starts from getting out of the mind heart and getting in embodied compassion. Because the mind heart thinks it's compassionate too. And it chases around going, I'm compassionate. Look at me. I've got a pitchfork. And I'm putting my pitchfork against these other things that are wrong, that are not meaningful. The embodiment of love, not just wearing a love t-shirt or tie-dye, but the embodiment of love is to understand that the process of love is a difficult one. But the process of love is only asking one thing. It's only asking one thing to us. So we can look at it and go, oh my God, it's so hard. But when you look at it, what it's actually doing is just taking us from here and embodying it into our heart. And it's an amazing experience to wake up to your heart. And that's who you truly are.